Hello, I'm Merrick Masters. Welcome to Masters and Bolts, the Business of Politics. The Business of Politics is a weekly podcast that brings you information about the business of electing candidates to public office and influencing lawmakers. Whether we like it or not, politics is a business. It takes money, organization, and people to win elections and affect public policies. Today, our guest is Mario Morrow, president of Mario Morrow and Associates. I will now turn things over to our co-host, Bill Bolts, who will introduce Mr. Morrow. Bill?
So our pleasure today to have Mario Morrow, the president of Mario Morrow and Associates, LLC. And I want to do a brief introduction, if I might, Mario.
Sure, thank you.
President of Mario Morrow and Associates, LLC, proud graduate of Detroit Public Schools, one of the many distinguished graduates of Mumford High School. That's a high school that's produced more than its fair of stars, to be sure. Undergraduate studies in education at Michigan State, graduate work at Wayne State, my employer. Worked his way up through the teaching ranks, like my father, an elementary school teacher, but worked with gifted and talented students through the Detroit Board of Education, and then up the ranks, department head, assistant principal, executive director of communications, and assistant superintendent, then superintendent at Albion Public Schools. He's worked at Alma College, just a very impressive background. Like me, worked for Wayne County Neighborhood Legal Services as Director of Outreach. Maybe we'll get into that. But a person that's advised and counseled a very impressive list of political candidates, very successful candidates from, dare I say, both sides of the aisle. Detroit City Council member Gil Hill, the late and respected Dr. Charles Vincent, a number of the trustees on Wayne County Community College Board, State Rep Martha Scott, the late Jackie Vaughn III, Wayne County Clerk Teola Hunter, the Patrick Olmsted Blackman Group, Penny Baylor, a Wayne State person, Judge Paula Humphreys, Judge Curtis Wilder, and Governor Jennifer Granholm, and that's just naming a few. And also a long and very impressive list of corporate clients have worked with Mario. Still very much a noted political analyst, both for local and national media outlets. Welcome, Mario.
Thank you. Thank you very much. As you were reading through the bio, I'm beginning to feel old here.
Yeah. One of the things we'd like to begin with is if you could share with us a little bit about the personal journey, about your life history to where you are now as president of Mario Morrow and Associates.
Thanks. And gentlemen, thank you very much for having me. I just can't wait to begin to watch your podcast, and from hearing about it, I know it's going to be a major success, and I know it can be an educational tool for many in the future as they watch it and learn. And hopefully they can learn things from people like me. I'm a Detroiter, as you mentioned, born and raised, went to Detroit Public Schools, was brought up with my two brothers and a single mother. My mother and father were divorced when I was about 7 years old. But my mother instilled in us a lot of values, a lot of things that we had to do. And that was, number one, education, number two, church, and number three, be respectful and be mindful of your surroundings at all times. Background, by the way, my mother is still living. She turned 100 years old, August 21st of this year, 2024, and still ask those hard questions. Are you doing the right thing? Are you doing the right thing by God? Are you behaving yourself like a mother would talk to a son? So as we were growing up, we had these values. We didn't have a car. So we caught the bus, two buses to Central United Methodist Church on every Sunday, downtown Detroit. And as a treat, Mom would take us on a tunnel bus over to Windsor, and we'd spend maybe 1 or 2 Sundays out the month in Windsor. And that explored our minds of travel and tourism and things like that. But still, what I'm trying to get at is my mom instilled the values that we have, that my brothers and I have today. And that is to be respectful, be mindful, be educated, and do the best you can for those around you and help who you can. Upon graduating from Detroit Public Schools, as you mentioned, I went to Michigan State. I graduated from Mumford High School actually in 2 years. And it wasn't because I was double promoted or triple promoted. I learned the system. I was smart back then, and I figured out that you could go to night school, you can go to summer school, and you didn't have to take these study hall or long lunches, and you can take classes, and you can graduate early. I figured that out, graduated early. I went to Michigan State, and to some degree, in all honesty, I think that was somewhat of a mistake because I think that I was immature when I attended Michigan State. I was early 17, in which most of the guys around me were 18 and 19, and I just did not focus on my studies as well as I should. I ended up spending 5 years in Michigan State, changed studies from hotel, restaurant, institutional management to education because I valued education, and I thought I had a buddy who was studying education, and it looked so fun. And when I graduated from Michigan State, I taught. I did something interesting. I was so frustrated, gentlemen, with the education system that in 1986, and I was 26 years old, I decided to run for school board. So I just pulled my friends together and said, hey, I want to do this. I'm gonna run for school board. And as I was going around, some of the committees that you interview with, and Bill, you're familiar with these political committees that you go to get endorsements, they said, what are you going to do if you win? And I said, what do you mean? I'm going to serve the school. You can't be on the school board and be teaching at the same time. I said, uh-oh, I'm in trouble because if I do win, I'm not going to have a job because the school board meeting is only paid $30 a meeting. But that was a great learning experience. I came in third place out of about 5 people. And from that point, started my political career in which I started volunteering on campaigns. These guys started calling me up. You did great. Work on my campaign. And I just worked on a few campaigns. And from there, I started working on, as you mentioned, the Hope Team. And Gil Hill was a big campaign. And I was a young campaign manager. And that's how the road to political consulting and political analyzation started.
Very good. Can you tell us a little bit about Mario Morrow and Associates, its mission? What's it about?
Yeah.
The thrust behind this organization.
First and foremost, it's a small firm. When I started it, and I actually started right after that school board run in 1986, as a part-time, just to do some political campaigns and work and help people out, just to have fun and get out there and meet people. I didn't make a lot of money back then because I did have a full-time job, but it turned into a love, a passion. At one point, Mario Morrow and Associates was 80% political, 20% corporate. That has totally changed now. It's about 20% political and 80% corporate. When I first started doing campaigns, I always wanted to be quoted in the paper and I always wanted to be on TV. It's just those national publications. And that was just a big goal of mine. And I set out to do that. And I was so young that the reporters didn't want to put me on TV because they were like, oh, this young guy doesn't know what he's talking about. There were 2 guys, Jack Casey and Maury Gleischer. Back in the day, those names.
Yeah.
Jack Casey was Casey Communications. Maury Gleischer was a big-time political consultant to people like Milliken and Coleman Young and others. They were up in age. Maury dies. Jack goes to California, and there's no political analyst in the city of Detroit, period, none. By this time, I've got some experience. I finally started getting quoted in Detroit News by a young lady. Her name was Yolanda Woodley. She was a political reporter. But she said, I'm not going to put your picture in the paper because you look too young. She was very honest. I said, okay. So for a long time, people just saw my name and they didn't see my face. And they thought I was an Italian guy. Mario Morrow, right. I would always tell, I was named after Mario Lanza. My mother loved opera. So I went into this political consulting or political analyzation piece by way of default. Mario Morrow and Associates today is a result of that. We have now moved into crisis management, which is pretty much 50% of our business, and strategic communications planning and consulting. We advise, as you mentioned, some of the top corporations in this town and around the state. I've worked for 3 governors, both sides of the aisle. And it's all about integrity and believing in what you believe in and not just a party or their vision. My vision is to make sure that things are done on a fair and equal basis. And if I can tell the story of my client, and if I can educate the public to a way that they can think and make their own judgment and opinion based on what I'm suggesting or giving them as far as education, then I've done my job. We're a small firm, family firm pretty much. There are only 8 of us, but we're a close-knit family firm and we enjoy what we do.
That's very impressive. Are there specific successes that you take special pride in that you and your firm have accomplished? And then, of course, I'm going to follow this. Are there challenges and are they, oh darn, I wish we'd have. Let's start with successes first. You've been doing this a long time. Are there specific successes that you're especially proud of?
Number one, working with members of the community who want to be school board members over the past, originally when I first started off, and that was a compassion because they didn't get paid a lot of money. They get stipends to go to meetings, but it was all about the kids and anything that has an effect with children, whether it's education at the lower level or collegiate level, it has my heart. So I believe some of those top successes are getting those people who are committed to education elected to the school board. And I also think that success for me is when you have the mayor or a governor or a secretary of state or a Wayne County executive or Oakland County exec send you a note or give you a call and ask you and seek your advice and your opinion. That means a lot. That means that they've watched, they valued my opinion, and they are in a position where they don't know everything. They know I don't know everything, but at least they're willing to listen to me and hear me out. And I think that to me, that's success and that's achievement. There have been some pitfalls along the way. And I think that along the way, and I think this is good for those younger generational kids that are coming up, is that we all try to move too fast. And sometimes we tackle too much, more than we can chew. And at one point, I had so many clients and so many corporate entities that were seeking me out that I was overwhelmed. And I was just not getting sleep and not watching my health and things like that. So I think that over time, it was all about pacing yourself. And I think one of the biggest things that I regret over years is that I didn't pace myself as much as I should have. I've been married to my wife now for 31 years. We've had a great life together, great marriage, 2 wonderful kids. But I think that early on, I could have really spent a lot more time focusing on family rather than focusing on this personal success of myself and my company.
How about with respect to clients, maybe political candidates, maybe corporate clients that, in retrospect, maybe a different pathway, a different kind of advice would have been more valuable to them? Are there any of those? Boy, I wish I'd have done that a little differently.
Yeah, there are quite a few of those, to be honest with you. But I will say that without mentioning any names, I remember running a particular campaign for a person who was running for a high office in one of the local cities. And I was holding a community meeting, if you will, just of volunteers to come and let's get together, let's go over the fundraising volunteer efforts. And she was out campaigning, knocking on doors. And she busted in the campaign office and said, "Why are you all in here meeting? If you want to run the campaign, then you could run the campaign. But you hired me to run the campaign, and this is the way we do it." I wish I had not jumped off the rail that fast because I did. We had this controversy discussion in front of everyone. And if I had to take that back, I probably would have said, "Can we go on the back and discuss this for a minute?" So I think I might have been a little hothead, but that was one. As far as real advice, I think that I've been pretty good about giving good advice to clients. I don't have any regrets other than a couple mild mistakes along the way, whether we should not have issued a statement here, or maybe we should have tweaked it better this way. Or to be honest with you, if you, as the consultant, does not have all the information or all the information has not been given to you, and you make a statement, then you're out there looking, uh-oh, the press is not letting up. Gathering information, making sure you have all the information, and making sure Just like a lawyer, don't lie to your lawyer because it will come back to bite you.
Very good. Merrick, to you, if we could.
Well, we're going to switch gears a little bit, Mario, and talk a little bit your role as an interviewer. You've done a lot of interviews, but you also have become an interviewer in your program, Casual Conversations. And we'd like you to tell us a little bit about the sort of the mission behind that program and the perspective it's giving you on the leadership in the community.
That is one of those ideas and brainstorming concepts that came out of a staff meeting. I have been in front of the camera and in front of people for a long time now, a number of years. My staff was saying, you've got these relationships. You know these people, you can call them, you can get them in front of the camera, you can sit down and talk to them, and you can get them to talk about pretty much anything other than what they normally do on a day-to-day basis. So it was very persuasive for my staff to say, this is what we think you should do. So we tested the water. I made a couple calls, high-level executives, political figures, and we said casual conversations because we wanted to be casual. We didn't want to just talk about their career and things that people have already heard about. So we had them sit down and we just tried to loosen them up. And we talked about, for instance, with Warren Evans. Here's a guy, county exec, Wayne County, career in law enforcement for a number of years, lawyer, but his passion and his love are horses. He loves horses and he loves to ride horses and he loves to hunt. He loves his grandkids that people just don't hear about, especially if you're on a campaign trail. And then there are others. There's Bishop Edgar Van, who grew up in the church, who graduated in public school. There are different types of things within folks that folks like you and I typically don't know about until we sit them down and hear their story. Pretty much what you're doing today. So casual conversations is just that. It's a casual conversation to educate the public about people that they see on the news, in the paper all the time, but typically don't hear about their personal lives, things that they really light up and shine when you ask them about sewing or painting or knitting or whatever the case may be.
From your many roles that you've played, you've been able to get a variety of different perspectives on the community and its leadership, not only in politics, but also in business and economics. And I was just wondering if you might comment on how you would think the more senior generation compares to the new and emerging leadership that you see in the community.
Excellent question. I grew up with a lot of older politicians and a lot of older business leaders who are a lot more serious about the direction of their future and the future for kids. They would take their time and they would spend time with you and talk about the past and how they progressed through things like civil rights and through controversy and discrimination versus the newer generation of political leaders and business leaders think more single-focusedly about themselves. How can I move myself higher up the ladder rather than taking the entire village with me? And I think that's so common in today's society. And we go through these scales of ups and downs with waves. For instance, Black Lives Matter came into fruition for a while. Now it died out. Police brutality became a large focus point, but then it died out. Our older generation tends to hold on to things and keep pushing. There is a disconnect. It is no secret that there is a disconnect between the younger generation, the middle-aged generation, and the older generation. Our generation, the younger generation, if you will, they don't vote as much. They're not as politically active as much. They don't look to go into politics or education. They want to make the quick buck and become entrepreneurs more than anything else. And I think that's a major flaw within our society. And I don't know what to do about it other than the fact to keep educating people. But hopefully it'll turn around and become a 180 and come back around where our focus point will be more on collective community activism versus individual personal gain.
Certainly in the age of TikTok and Instagram, we're into immediate gratification.
That's right.
My grandkids are into video games. They're almost glued to video games and with instant gratification. So I certainly hear what you're saying very much. It's so true. Any surprises along the way that you picked up in your discussions with leaders in the community? Anything really grabbed your attention that you thought was singularly important?
I was actually quite surprised as I came up in the political environment and also in the business environment that successful men and women, when they see that you're serious about doing the right thing along the way and growing your personal growth, they will gravitate towards you and pull you and lift you up. I was quite surprised that I can actually say that I've got tons and tons of mentors, people who didn't even tell me that they were my mentors, but would call and say, "How you doing? I saw you on the news," or "I read a comment that you made and I'm a little concerned the way you delivered that comment. Can we talk about it?" And in, at a younger age, I would get offended by that. But now, over the past 20 years or so, I took that as a compliment to say, well, they picked up on something that it could got me in trouble. And they're trying to help me massage this a little bit. I used to have a show on WDIV called Or Not. It was a little segment that we talked about people who were hot and people who were not. And it was a 30-second segment. When I really started trying to go out and get some business, I wanted some business with Detroit City Council or whatever city councils that were out there. And I would meet with the city council members. They say, "We'd love to give you the business, but you just said some stuff about the councilwoman that she's not hot. And it's going to be very difficult for us to convince her to hire you to work for her because you just said she was on her way out or something like that." And that was a learning lesson. I was like, wow, I guess I better stop saying negative things about people because they're very sensitive, even though if they were true or not. So along the way, those were seniors who were vested in the business for a long time that would, in a very subtle way, tell you there's some things that you can do, but you might want to do it a little differently. So I've gotten a little more constructive on how I criticize people in the paper and on the news.
That's very interesting and useful advice, I think. Bill, I'm going to turn things over to you to follow up with the next segment of questions.
Mario, wondering if there is a consistent need that you find in your clients. You said that most of your clients now are corporate clients. And what are you finding that across the corporate clientele, what is it that they really could use a little help with? Is it relationship with government? Is it relationship with the community? Is it relationship with their clients? What is there? Are you finding that a lot of people need some specific thing that Morrow and Associates has been able to deliver for them?
That is a very good question. And one of the highlights of Mario Morrow and Associates is that we strive as relationship builders. We connect. You would think that corporate leaders would have all these connections and relationships with government affairs and elected officials and people who are really working for those folks who have the power. They don't. And in a lot of situations, we found that corporate leaders, when they call office of an elected official, the staff, the younger staff, just they don't know who they are. So we'll have him or her call you back, or let me take a message. And so they're feeling a little, wow, this is a little strange. I'm not getting a call back. So we facilitate those relationships. In addition to that, we found that most of these corporate leaders, religious leaders as well, hire people who are trusted and valued employees, but they don't always tell them the truth. They will tell them what they think they want to hear, and it gets them in trouble. So Mario Morrow and Associates, we don't play with that. We tell you the truth. No, you can't say that. You shouldn't say that. And here's why. Or if you say that, this is what's going to happen. they want the truth. They want honesty, and they want someone to keep them out of trouble. And I think for the large part, this is the values that we have. We're trustworthy, we have integrity, they believe us, we don't get people in trouble, and we're fair and reasonable when it comes down to delivering bad news. Like, you're going to have to step down. You're going to have to resign. Let's think about your family. Don't think about your ego. While on the other side of that, staff is saying, if he leaves, I don't have a job. So let's just stay in here, fight it out. We're honest. And I think that people look for honesty. They look for people with integrity, and they value that. And I think for overall, if you think about the overall goal there is protecting the principal and protecting the principal's family, they're all in.
That's interesting. So a kind of truth and integrity has a long-term value to the client that, might in the long run give them a benefit, even though there's a short-term cost that has to be paid.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. Tragedy is hard. Failure is hard. But the best revenge is success. And you can come back and become successful after mistakes, because everyone makes mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes.
You're speaking to individuals that are going to have a rough patch in their life, that something has happened and nothing's forever, right? We know that our roles often change in life. Is there something that helps the organization through these changes of leadership? Is there something that Mario Morrow and Associates gives these organizations that the great one is moving on and there's going to be change here? Is there anything you could share with us as to how you help that transition?
Yes, and I didn't really think about it that way until you posed the question, but when our clients tend to move on, with those who moved on or retire or decide to resign or whatever the case may be to move on, the new leaders that come in typically keep us. And that's a huge compliment. And they keep us for consistency for a few reasons, because they can see the good advice that we gave, and they know that we have a great rapport with staff and making sure that staff has consistency. And you're acting somewhat like a liaison between corporate leaders and the staff members, so that a lot of times staff will say, I've got these great ideas and I'm taking them to leadership, and leadership says, I don't know, but yet if you say the idea, they say, that's a hell of an idea, that's a great idea. How come you guys didn't think of that? Now, I personally have been in situations like that, because when I was executive director of communications for the Board of Education, I was over communications, assistant superintendent, and I worked for Ken Burnley. I would go to Ken Burnley with a ton of great ideas on what to do and how to do it. And I figured out that he didn't listen to me. He would call Bob Berg. So Bob Berg and I, former communications executives, press secretary to Coleman Young, and I were very, very good friends. And so I would say to Bob, at this time, Bob was working for Brogan and Partners. I said, Bob, look, you guys got this contract. I'm giving him these suggestions. He said, Mario, how come he's not listening to you? I said, I don't know, but you're the consultant. He's listening to you. He said, just give me your 10 ideas. I'll take them to him. So Bob takes the ideas to Ken Burnley, and Ken Burnley says, now I've taken these ideas to Ken before. He says, how come you didn't come up? I'm paying you all this money. How come you didn't come up with these ideas? I just had to swallow my pride. Bob's just more experienced than I am. But I say all that, Bill, because you have to build a relationship with both sides, both levels, the staff and leadership. And you have to help them through any and all difficulties that they have, because we know, or we don't know, what leadership's going through and what staff's going through. They're all working very hard, but there was a mistake made, and we all have to be on the same page to make sure that mistake is resolved.
Very interesting.
Mario, we want to talk a little bit about the nature of your business. You indicated earlier that when you initially started, it was about 80% political, 20% business. And it flipped over time to the opposite of that now. But when you are looking at businesses and political interests that come to you, do you notice that they have similar or different needs that you're trying to serve?
Yeah, most of them are similar. And it's interesting because they start off as a small crisis, if you will. It could be a deterioration of image. It could be somebody made a mistake or somebody had some infidelity. There could be some money issues, missed money, inappropriate appropriations. And they call because the number one goal is they want to be protected in the press. The press will come, they'll call, and the press is the media, the reporters can be extremely frightening, especially if they walk up on you when you're getting out your car or you're walking into your office and they're chasing you and you're trying to walk away and it looks as if you're running from them. We do media relations. We have media training. We work with them. And for more than anything, you would think that these leaders would still want to go out there and jump in front of the mic and just tell the story. They don't want to have any parts of this. So they'll say, we want you to be our spokesperson. We want you to speak for us. We want you to be the face of the company. We want you to go out here and take the hits and you speak. You be the voice. I don't want to be in the paper. All I want to do is send it to you and the lawyer. 9 times out of 10, the number one reason why they call us is because they want us to work with the media. They want to stay out the media, and whatever you do in the media, of course, represent us well. We want you to be the face, and we want you to handle us in the best way you can. I've done this for pretty much every level of government, on a state level, of course, but I've done it with corporate leaders as well. And I find it very interesting. It's almost like a corporate leader who has been a CEO, very accomplished man or woman at a major corporation, and they go to a career day to speak to a kindergarten class and freeze up. They can't talk because I don't know how to talk to these kids. But yet you can take someone who can go in very comfortably and talk to kids and relate very well with them. It's all about your comfortability and your level of comfort when it comes to representing yourself and your corporation. And the truth be told, a lot of these guys don't need to speak to the media because they'll speak and they'll say things that lawyers will cringe if they open their mouths one more time.
So you're a good layer of protection for both businesses and politicians when they find themselves in a crisis.
That is that's a very good way of putting it.
I was going to say that when you approach this, both businesses and politicians get themselves into those difficult situations. When you look at the political environment, has it increased the likelihood that businesses and politicians will get into that kind of trouble? We live in a contentious political environment now where we call them battleground states, which indicate that they're very competitive. And it seems like it's very easy for businesses and politicians to get into trouble. Do you find a common denominator there?
I do. I think sometimes they can't help themselves. I'm talking about leaders. Sometimes you get so caught up in the world of you that you forget that when you speak, others are listening and you're not just talking to yourself. And it all comes back full circle because the same mistakes that have been made since the Roman Empire seem to be being made today. You know, you have people who are getting caught up on elected officials with embezzlement. You have people in corporate who are doing things that they shouldn't do and getting in trouble. And you would think from watching the news or reading about the last guy that, oh, this is not going to happen again. But people think they're smarter than the system, or in some degree, they're naive and they've got people working for them that are making these mistakes. And they thought that these people were good, justified individuals doing the job. Look at the conservatory right now. You had a great number of very experienced people around one individual who seemed to be taking everybody to the cleaners. And you get caught because you're not watching, you're not paying attention, you get too comfortable. And I do believe that it comes back full circle. I would just advise people to be very careful, don't take anything for granted, and always have checks and balances in place at all times. Businesses, elected officials, government, they are tangent. They move so fast. People move. It's fluid. And I think that people need to be very careful because people have personal goals and ambitions, and sometimes they get caught up with the evilness of that rather than the good.
I want to ask you if you have any final thoughts you'd like to share with the audience, particularly people thinking about careers in business or politics, and how they can avoid some of the challenges you see them getting involved, almost self-inflicted wounds, if you will. Do you have any suggestions for them, or when they should come to you, or more precisely, when they should come to you? Because you probably like to get them sooner rather than later in terms of their difficulty.
Yeah, thank you. Life's a full circle. And like I had mentioned earlier, none of us know everything. We all make mistakes. But if you think that something's going in the wrong direction, if you think that there's a problem here, if like going to the hospital, if you feel an illness in your stomach and you just say, I'm just going to take some Tums, and this illness keeps coming and coming in, but you're avoiding the hospital because you're scared the doctor's going to tell you have cancer. You don't want to hear the bad news. My suggestion is that you get some help fast. You call someone, get a free consultation, sit down, have a discussion, feel it out. It could be nothing, but it could be huge too. My advice would be to younger folks who are looking into getting into business, who are looking into getting into politics, is to read. History has a tendency to repeat itself. Read, learn, educate yourself, talk to people with experience. If you're a student, talk to your professors. Don't be shy. Go in and sit down and talk to them. They love to talk. Professors, I'm a former professor. You love to talk and hear yourself, but you love to listen as well, and you feel like you're doing some good. So educate yourself. History repeats itself. If you're a business person and you see something going in the wrong direction, or if you think that there's a correction that could be put in place, seek out someone like me. There are others out there too, to just sit down and have a discussion, see if there could be a remedy or a solution to the problem.
Well, Mario, we both would like to thank you very much for an immensely interesting and informative interview. People will learn a lot from it. We thank you very much for spending the time and sharing your insights with us. And Bill, I'll let you offer any final thoughts as well.
Just an enjoyable time together. I've learned a lot, and I think I like the medical analogy. It's if you think there might be something wrong, talk to someone that can help. And Mario Morrow and Associates would be a good place to start.
I thank you guys for having me. This has been quite enjoyable, and I can't wait to watch your podcast, and hopefully I will learn something from your other guests.
Thank you very much, Mario.
Thank you.